What's up, everybody? Super Scotty here. Another episode of Tales from the Super Scotty Crypt. And this one's a continuation of the very first episode that I dropped on here. And I may repost it. Like, I took it down because, like, I just felt some of the stuff we did was just, I just didn't want to encourage that behavior. Um, but I may end up reposting. Like I said, it was a long time. We were 18 years old, when all this happened. This was like 2003 or something. Um, so yeah, like 22 years ago. Do the math. Kind of, kind of dates me. Uh, but in that episode, if you haven't seen it, or if you have, where I left off was like we got robbed in California, and because the whole time we were supposed to connect with the only reason we got robbed was because we were supposed to connect with this one guy that was friends with our friend back home, and we had left to go home, after getting robbed and everything like that, and we're like 2 hours going home, and I think we're in crossing into Nevada or something like that, and we finally get the call from the guy. So we drive the 2 hours back, get the stuff that we were supposed to get from him, and then we take off and head back home. And it's a 45-hour drive, back to South Carolina, where we're from. And we're about 10 hours into the trip. And on the way there, we took the southern route. We took like I-20, I-10, like going there. And then on the way back, we're taking the I-40 route, okay? And which is like parallel to it, but I think it's north of that. It's north of I-10 and I-20 and everything like that. And so we're driving. We're about 10 hours into the trip, and back home, got the stuff that we were trying to get, the whole time. So we had that, I mean, it was weed, whatever. And we're about 10 hours into the trip. It's the middle of the night. We're driving through the desert. I guess this was I-40, I suppose. I think it was. A big chunk of that route's I-40. I don't remember if at this point in time, if it was I-40 yet or not, or if it was. I think it was I-40. But anyways, it was the interstate through the middle, still like desert area, Arizona, middle of the night, not many cars passing by, and we're driving, and all of a sudden the car stops and like breaks down, and it's the middle of the night in the middle of the desert, and we're sitting there on the side of the road, and we're like, oh shit, And it was like the loneliest feeling in the world, because uh, there would be randomly, like, there was no cars out there almost, and it's the middle of the night, middle of nowhere, and we're just totally by ourselves. Every now and then, like, an 18-wheeler would pass by, and you'd hear it, like, see it coming from the distance, and then as it passed by, and you hear the and then as it disappeared into the distance, you're just all alone again, like out in the middle of the fucking desert. And the problem is because like this was 2003, we had cell phones, but none of us were getting a signal. Like none of us, we're out in the middle of nowhere. And my one friend's phone had been dead for days. Like he was having troubles with it, days before, and couldn't charge it and stuff like that. It had been dead. And we've been talking about that for a while. So we were using our other two phones, and neither one of us was getting a signal at all. So like we're just stranded in the middle of the desert in the middle of the night, like fucking 35 hours from home. Uh, and so we're like, we're screwed. What are we going to do? And my friend that had the dead phone turns it on, and somehow it turns on. Like I swear it had been shot for days on end, and he couldn't charge it and everything like that, and it just turns on like miraculously. And he gets a signal too. Like not only did his phone turn on, he had a signal somehow. I just don't know how this worked. So we called AAA, and they towed us to the nearest town nearby, which there wasn't much out there, but it was Winslow, Arizona. Okay. And if you've heard the Eagles song "Take It Easy," he says, "Standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona." And from what I heard of the story of that song is that the same thing happened to them. They broke down somewhere out there in the desert, and that's like the only place to go is like Winslow, Arizona. So they towed us. The guy towed us to Winslow, and we had to hole up in a hotel, a little motel room up there. And turns out it was an alternator, so that we had to. The part had to be ordered from Flagstaff. Okay, so we had to wait there for the part to come into Flagstaff before we could get going again. And at this point in time, we got in contact with like our parents and stuff like that. They were going to pay for the part and help us get home and everything like that. But while we were in Winslow, it was very interesting. And then there's actually a statue on the corner of a cowboy like doing like this or something in Winslow, Arizona, and it says standing on a corner, right? And I think that's where I think it must have been there when the Eagles, broke down or whatever, because I think that's where they got that line, was from this cowboy thing statue that says like standing on a corner, and it's in Winslow, Arizona. And and I think it's Route 66 is the road that goes through there, if I recall correctly. And so we're holed up in there, and we still got, I don't know if you heard that first episode, we still got that nasty bottle of Tanqueray because we hadn't even been able to drink it. Like the whole time we were there, it was like a handle of Tanqueray that was so gross that like we just barely nursed it like the whole time that we were out in California. And we still had it, and then plus we had the weed that we had gotten, in Newport and everything like that. So we just figured it's just more time to just chill out and hang out in the hotel room in this random town in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, and just enjoy ourselves, watch TV. And actually a fight that I was looking forward to seeing was actually, they had free HBO or whatever at the hotel, and it was the Lennox Lewis Vitaly Klitschko fight, and it was on while we were there. And so I was actually kind of excited that I got to see the fight while we were there. And I remember we'd fogged out the hotel room so bad when we had that weed that I took a picture of like the TV from inside the hotel room, and it was so foggy that you could like barely even make out the light from the TV like being there. And so we were just like smoking that up. And I don't know if we were really drinking on that Tanqueray still or not. But while we were there was these, so we made friends with like the townspeople and the local folks and stuff like that. And while we were there was these two guys that we ran into, Jake and Jeff. And I'll probably never forget Jake or Jeff. But they were funny as hell because like Jake always wore these sunglasses and acted like something was like going on all the time. Like there was always like high stakes, like, he's always like pushing up his glasses while he talked to you and like being like, man, we got something going down, and, and like kept on telling it, like he wanted my friends to help him steal a couch one day. Like he's like, man, if I can get you some, like give him some money or some more weed or something like that to help him break into this house and steal a couch. Of course, my friends didn't do it, but they're like, and then the other guy, Jeff was the one that, Jake was the one with sunglasses. Jeff was the one that, something was off about Jeff. Like he wasn't all there. He was kind of strange. But he would show up every morning. They knew that we had the Tanqueray, and he'd show up every morning with like this little mug and like knock on our door and be like, "Hey, can I get can you fill me up with?" Like they didn't have much out here, like out there in the middle of the desert in Winslow, and we'd pour him out like some Tanqueray, and so that went on for a while, and like I want to say something else went down too, while we were there. Involving Jake and Jeff, but other than them trying to get him to steal the couch and everything like that. But he always was talking like something was going down, like I guess they had to entertain themselves, feel like something more was going on than what really was there, which was like a whole lot of not much. I just can't remember what the other thing was that they were trying to get us to do or something like that. But this one day though, I went over to where Jeff was staying, which was like this little community, like right next to the hotel. Like it was just like the next place over was like these little apartments or something. And I go in there for some reason because Jake was going to do something with my other two friends, so I had to wait behind. I don't know if they went to go do another one. This is probably that other thing I couldn't think of that they were trying to get him to do or something like that. But in the meantime, I was waiting there with Jeff and this other guy that I guess was his roommate there, and he was real strange too. So Jeff and this roommate of his were just totally weird. Like, I mean, like something wasn't right. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't figure out exactly what it was, but I was just like, I guess this is desert people. I guess this is what they're like. You know what I'm saying? I had to figure that. And he was in there like eating this piece of steak while I was sitting inside the apartment, and it was bloody. I'm talking about like it's just like barely even singed on the outside, and he's got this sharp ass knife right here, and he's like cutting it. he's cutting this bloody steak, eating like blood. And I'm just like, and he keeps looking at me, right? While I'm sitting there, he keeps on looking at me, and he starts like flexing his muscles with the knife, dude. Like, he's looking at me and like being like this, like flexing his muscles and like having the knife right there. And I was like, oh shit, is this dude, what's he got going on right now? And so I had to think quickly, and I was like, so you been working out, man? Like, because he was like flexing his muscles. I was like, so you been working out, bro? And he's like, in the middle of all that, he's like, yeah. Like you do like that. That's actually what he was trying to portray to me, was that he'd been working out. Like I can tell you something was off about this dude. But so I was a little bit like nervous for just a split second, not really, but like I figured, so I just tried to relate to him. I was just like, yo, so you been working out, man? Like, you know what I'm saying? He's like, yeah, like he goes back to kind of, and his roommate was even more strange, where I just didn't want to, and so eventually, I don't know, I got out of there. I don't know if my friends came back or if I just decided to go back to the hotel room or what. But that kind of has context for later in the story. But while we were there too, oddly enough, I have this uncle that says he worked for the CIA like for his whole career and didn't really tell anybody. And he's my dad's brother, and he hadn't really told anybody until after he retired and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, I was with the CIA the whole time. And he wasn't like a spy, but he was doing like economic forecasting is what he said he'd do. He'd find all the numbers for all these different places that had CIA interests as far as the economy goes. And that's what he said he did. But anyways, we're just I think we were drinking on that Tanqueray bottle. Like, we maybe had some drinks that night or whatever. And the next morning, I hear this knock on the door. One of the days they were there, we were there for like 5 days. And it's my uncle. Like, he's just like in the middle of the desert. My CIA uncle is there, like knocking on the door. And I'm like, hey, Uncle Maury, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I was kind of nearby, passing through the area, doing something. I can't even remember what he said he was doing. Something to do with business. I think he did something after he had something else going on, like after his whole CIA career. There's no way to really confirm that, but I don't see why he would lie. He's a really smart guy and legit dude. So I think he really was with doing economic forecasting for the CIA or whatever. But he took us to breakfast that morning and just like I don't think he put any money in our pockets. He might have given us like $20 or something like that, but he bought us breakfast and gave us like a few bucks. I think he gave us like $20 or something just so we could, and was just checking in on us, I guess, while he was passing through. And that was really cool and random to see him. And then, so finally the part gets there and we get the car fixed and we're ready to get out of there and drive back home. And as I don't know how I didn't notice this, but as we're leaving out, that apartment complex next to us that where Jake didn't live there, but Jeff did. But Jake and Jeff were friends, and then he had the other roommate that was strange too. I saw the sign outside that, like these apartments or whatever, and it said housing for the criminally insane. I shit you not, dude. That's what it said. It said fucking housing for the criminally insane. That's who those guys were that was like had the knife and like was like flexing at me and stuff like that. And plus his roommate or whatever was really strange. Like, it just put me off, you know what I'm saying? Something was way off about him. But it was housing for the criminally insane. So I guess you commit a crime for that as far as insanity goes, and they just put you up in like the middle of the desert where nobody where you can't bother anybody really. And yeah, so I noticed that on the way out. I was like, holy shit, like the whole time those guys were right next door to us, and or that's the guys we'd kind of been hanging out with and stuff like that. So that was interesting. But when we finally got going back home, we decided that we would just drive the rest of the way back home because we were so ready to get home at this point in time. We'd been in California for 2 or 3 weeks and then had the whole robbing fiasco and then broke down in the desert and then was there for 5 more days. And we were just ready to get home. So what we did is we drove 35 hours straight to the house, just rotating drivers. Like, you'd sleep in the back seat or the front seat. And then when the driver got tired, we rotated him around. And yeah, we went the I-40 route, which I think eventually landed us in Memphis, and before we came back south down to South Carolina. And I remember I think this guy was trying to steal our car in Memphis too. Like, we couldn't, like, none of us were that good at a stick, even though my friend was decent because it was his car, but I was definitely wasn't good with a stick, and we were having trouble like backing it up this super steep hill at a parking spot. And this one guy was offering, he's like pressing us, trying to be like, he's like, no, I'll back it up for you, like just let me get in, like, and all this kind of stuff. I think he was probably just going to take the car and go, but obviously we didn't let him do that. But then we drove the rest of the way from Memphis, like, back down south to South Carolina, and made it home. And that was the end of that trip, which it was a lot of fun, great experiences. And there's actually even more stories from our time out in Laguna, aside from the one where we got robbed. Like, even quickly, my friends one day were trying to buy alcohol, and they got like some street guys in Laguna downtown to like buy the bottle for them or something like that. And these cops have been watching them the whole time. Like, I wasn't there. I was back at the house, my grandmother's house, and these cops, they said as soon as this guy got the bottle and came out the door and to give it to them, these cops like swarmed him. Had been watching him the whole time and was like telling him, like they were like, oh, we're kids from South Carolina, we don't know what's going on, like, sort of thing. And the cops were all threatening him and being like, listen, man, this is, this is a hard city. It's Laguna Beach. You know what I'm saying? He's like, this is California. They're like telling him, like, from what they said, they're like telling him, like, yeah, man, like, next time these guys, they don't care. They'll just take you in the back alley and slit your throat, like, you got to watch out for stuff like this, in big, bad California. I know you guys are from South Carolina, but, what I'm saying? So, like, they just played we're innocent, like, just kids trying to get some alcohol, which is really what it was, but apparently the cops all told him that like these guys would slit your throat if they could and all this kind of stuff. But I'm trying to think of what else went down. There was something else that went down, like when we went to Venice Beach. There was something else cool that happened, but I can't remember it right now. But anyways, we made it home, and everything was cool after that. But yeah, I guess that's just a short story for today. Just the tail end of what happened on the California trip. And yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that, and put links up to my music here on the screen so that you can check that out. A varied style of rap music where I have like songs that I try to make none of them sound the same. Some of them have country vibes, some of them have like some singy vibes. There's like, you know, harder rap, and then there's like softer rap, so I got a lot of different things going on with my music. So I'd like it if you would check that out and give it a listen, and I will talk to you guys next time. All right, see ya, bye.